Hello and welcome to this Haas Tip of the Day. Our machines are storing all kinds of useful information in them, from probe data to cycle times and part counts. And all of that information can be accessed right from your part programs and pushed to software on your computer or onto a file that you can access later. One easy way to access all of this information on your Haas next generation control is through the use of DPRNT statements. Everything for me begins with my setup sheet. So check this out. I've got a block loaded up. Now if you're tightening up those tools by hand, any information at all that can be represented by a macro variable number can be communicated by your machine using a DPRNT statement. And setting 261 defines where that DPRNTed information goes, whether to a waiting program on our computer or to a file. We get to all of our DPRNT settings on the setting page by entering DPRNT, DPRNT with no I, and then pressing F1 to search. Let's go ahead and DPRNT some information to a file on our USB stick. We'll go ahead and go to setting 261, DPRNT store location, and set it to file. I can type the file path of where I'd like my DPRNT file to go into setting 262 by hand, manually. Or we can just navigate to the folder that we want the DPRNT file to go to using list program. Then press F3 and then select setting 262 DPRNT location. We told it that we wanted the information in a file, and we told it where that file would be located. All of the information I now DPRNT from a program will be sent to a file on my USB stick. Each time I run a DPRNT statement, it adds to our dprnt.out text file. That file gets longer and longer every time a DPRNT statement is run. It's not overwritten. If there wasn't a dprnt.out file, the control creates one for us. You can view that file right from your control, or you can take the USB stick back to a computer and view the information there. If you've got a Haas with a next generation control and the macros option, you can be DPRNTing all kinds of information today, right now. Now I've left you a sample DPRNT program for your next gen control. You can download it by following the link in the description. If we select TCP port under setting 261, then all of our DPRNTed information will be sent as live streaming data to a terminal program. A simple terminal program called PuTTY is available for free online at putty.org. PuTTY needs to know where to look. That's our machine's IP address, and it needs to know what port number to send the information over. The IP address can be found on your machine on the Settings network page. The port number can be found under setting 263, our DPRNT port on the control. We'll set our port number to 5052 on both PuTTY and on our control. Now there are lots of port numbers available, but port numbers 5001 through 5099 are commonly used. The terminal software and the machine have to have matching IP addresses and port information. Now when we command a DPRNT statement from our program, it's going to be live streamed to that terminal program, PuTTY. Now if you're having any type of problems connecting, try a different port number and make sure that PuTTY and your machine are using the same IP address and the same port numbers. And for those of you that are using data collection, make sure that the port number listed under setting 263, our DPRNT port, and setting 143, our machine data collection port, are set to different numbers. Otherwise, you might end up with a conflict. Now, people will DPRNT to files on their USB sticks or on their network all the time. That's pretty common. It's less common to DPRNT over TCP. That's usually reserved for machine monitoring. And PuTTY is just okay at that. It's not great for that type of information. There are companies out there with more advanced software. Companies like Predator, Machine Metrics, Factory Wiz, and Spectrum are just a few. DPRNT statements have their own way of doing things, their own syntax. It's really different than normal G code or even your own macro statements. If I DPRNT bore diameter in brackets, the control is going to transmit the text bore diameter. But if we actually want to transfer some macro variables, some macro information, we need to DPRNT the macro number followed by a 2-digit formatting number. And here's how those numbers work. I want to deprint my probed bore diameter. Now I know from page 4-2 in the Renishaw Inspection Plus manual that my probe diameters are stored in variable 188, which is the same as 10 188 on our next-gen control. We'll link to that Renishaw Inspection Plus manual in the description. Now my actual probed diameter in variable 10 188 is 1.12345. You can tell that I made that up, but it's a good example. If I deprint my bore diameter pound 188 bracket 11, my control is going to output 1 digit in front of the decimal point and 1 digit after. If I deprint that same variable with a format of 12, then we'll see 1 digit in front of the decimal and 2 digits after the decimal. 13, we'll see 3 places past the decimal. 14, we'll see 4 places past the decimal. In fact, with that 4 decimal place number, we'll see that the control rounded our number up from that 5th decimal place. Well, there you go. Any macro number that we want to communicate must be followed by that bracketed format number. Otherwise, it's just going to get transmitted as text. Those are the basics of deprinting. Now, for more information on how to format those deprint statements, just search for deprint in the latest version of the Haas manual. Also, you can find all those macro variable names, everything you'd ever want, in that manual that you can download from the Haas website. There are a couple things that you need to keep in mind when using deprint statements. Colons, those double dots, like you see here separating my hours, minutes, and seconds, only work in deprint statements in the latest versions of the next-gen control software, versions 17.2030 and newer. Also, in older software, you might have to use an asterisk to convey spaces between words or numbers in your deprint statements. Don't forget to follow the link in the description of the YouTube version of this video to find the example deprint statements that we've left for you. Deprint, VNC viewer, webcams, Haas Connect, machine data collect. All of these features can work together to help you better monitor your machines. Well, thanks for letting us be a part of your success and for watching this Haas Tip of the Day.